It's a warm welcome here in our studios in Serekunda. This is the Star TV News and I am Ajaka Desanyo. In the headlines tonight, newly elected President of Guinea-Bissau, Umaru Sissoco Embalo, arrives in the Gambia. Thousands of protesters chant 5 years as they petition Gambian leader to stay in office. APRC denies taking part in Sunday's pro-government protests. Courts are now very fair. Go to the courts. Taf Njai challenges accusers over Bruford land grabbing. The Gambia inaugurated Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara Conference Center. APRC is not a Jola party, says former Gambian leader Yahya Jammeh. On the international scene, offices of 4 media groups seized in Sudan. Massacre survivors rally against President Condé. Rockets hit Iraq military base near Baghdad amid US-Iran tensions. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. The newly elected President of Guinea-Bissau and former Prime Minister Umaru Sissoco Embalo this afternoon arrived in the Gambia for a day visit to tighten the bilateral relationships between the two countries. Dado Cham reports.
Addressing the press after a closed-door meeting with his Gambian counterpart at State House, President Umaru said he will do everything possible as a president to smoothen and work with President Barrow in all sectors of development, such as education, agriculture, and most importantly, security sector, and also to land on the tourism sector of the Gambia. President Umaru won a round of presidential election, but a dispute from the ruling party candidate could throw the country into extensive political crisis. Domingo, the ruling PAIGC party candidate, said the vote was marked by irregularities, annulment, and manipulation, which constitute electoral fraud, and that he could file a complaint to the Supreme Court. However, President Umaru said the Supreme Court of Guinea-Bissau has rejected the complaint made by his opponent. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Dado Chan.
On Sunday, thousands of protesters from Gambia for 5 Years movement took to the streets of Sting Corner to Denton Bridge, calling on President Barrow to stay for 5 years in office as dictates by the constitution of the country. Modu El Baji was there and he now files in this report.
Barely weeks after the 3-year JOTIAR movement held a protest for the president to respect the 3 years agreement as he promised during the presidential election in 2016. However, the Gambia for 5 Years movement also stormed the Sting Corner Junction to Denton Bridge, demanding for the president to respect the dictates of the constitution as it is stipulated in section 65 that a sitting president should serve for a period of 5 years. These peaceful protests attract people from almost all parts of the country. A senior member of the Gambia for 5 Years, Abdoulaye Wilane, denied allegations that this protest was funded by President Barrow. He called on the president to respect the dictates of the constitution.
The only message we want to deliver to His Excellency President Adama Barrow is Gambia is a state comprised of Muslims and Christians. We all believe in divine. But what we want to put to the president is to respect the oath, because we witnessed seeing him taking Al Quran to protect the constitution. Let him maintain and respect that oath.
Mr. Wilane argued that this 3 years agreement was just a moral agreement and the president cannot adhere to it. The Minister of Health, Lamin Samate, said this is part of the democratization process. He further indicated his support to the movement.
Well, you can see I didn't see any violence. There's no violence. But I think to me it is very good in the sense that this is democracy unfolding. When you have people, one group wants this, the other group wants the other thing. That's democracy. And both groups have a right to demonstrate what they want. So I don't think there should be any fighting. I don't think there should be any insulting. It is democracy unfolding. People saying this is what I want. And I happen to belong to the group who want the president to continue. So I'm here in my capacity as a Gambian.
The president of the Female Disabled Association of Serekunda, Maimouna Sarr, indicated that for the president to stay for 5 years is what is constitutional, not 3 years. and that's why they occupy the front line of the protest. Maimouna Sarr added that if there is violence, they are the most vulnerable. At the end of the protest, a petition was read to remind the president about the constitution by one of the officials of the Gambia for 5 years, and a copy was sent to the president through the government spokesperson Ibrahima G. Sankare.
Section 65 of the 1997 Constitution of the Gambia, which is an entrenched clause, provides that an elected president of the Republic shall serve for a term of 5 years. This provision supersedes the 2016 coalition agreement. However, it is common knowledge that the said agreement has been amended from 3 to 5 years, aligning it with the dictates of the Gambian Constitution.
The Gambia for 5 years calls on President Barrow and his government to adhere to the dictates of the Constitution, and if he betrayed them, they shall hold him and his government accountable for failing to uphold the dictates of the Constitution. Modu Elbaji, Star TV.
Doudou Jah, Deputy Spokesman of the Opposition Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction, APRC, has cleared the air on any involvement by the party during the 5 years for peace or pro-government protest that was held on Sunday from Sting Corner to Denton Bridge. Tumani Koli interviewed Doudou Jah and sent us this report.
Last month, Operation 3 Years Jotna went on a peaceful demonstration to demand for President Barrow's resignation in respect to the 2016 coalition agreement. Yesterday, January 12, Barrow for 5 years also went on what they call a solidarity march in defense of the Constitution, as they call on President Barrow to respect the constitutionally mandated 5-year term. What, however, caught the attention of many is a banner written boldly, APRC in defense of the Constitution. That has sparked many rumors that APRC is now supporting President Barrow to complete the 5-year term. This is something the APRC's deputy PRO, Doudou Jah, vehemently denies. He said the APRC does not also recognize those that held the banner as party militants.
The banner is not our banner, and the people that we saw in that video and the picture, we don't recognize them as APRC militants, and we're asking others around to help if they can help us identify who they are. APRC, we're a party, we don't hide. And if it's our banner, it should also bear our logo to show that it is APRC. It does not have APRC logo. Anybody can print a banner. And besides, if it was from APRC, they will see people, very popular people that they know within the APRC. We don't work on something, give it to people and said, you go and execute whilst we stay behind. That is not our principle. It's not our way of doing things. But whoever is trying to do so, they are after our people, trying to mobilize or lobby them to support President Adama Barrow, especially after they have their new party registered. And they go around telling people that APRC and the NPP, that's the National People's Party, will go into coalition. All these are things which are very untrue, and it is illegal, unprofessional, and I also call it fraud. And we'll not let it lying down. We're making investigations, we're making follow-up. Whoever is found wanting definitely will take whatever is necessary to make sure that such will not repeat.
Mr. Jah also says the investigations are ongoing and that the party will follow it to the very last dot. In what he called a propaganda, Jah also says he is not surprised at all. He says portraying a banner of APRC and saying in defense of a constitution that they are yearning to change is laughable. He also noted that the APRC is neither in support of Barrow nor the 3 years. He also sees no reason why the APRC should support President Barrow politically.
They're just trying to tie us around saying that APRC, you were in support of Barrow. We're not. We're not supporting Barrow. And I don't see why we should support Barrow as far as politics is concerned. When it comes to nation building, that's something else. But politically, to help Barrow to succeed or to win another election, I don't see any reason why we should do that.
On who they think is behind the said banner, Jah says they do not suspect any party or group, but they suspect individuals. However, he won't mention any names as he says they do not want to name the wrong people. However, Mr. Jah also mentioned that they do not intend to sue anyone as it could happen to anyone. Nonetheless, they will expose the person or people behind it for the whole country to see, he says. Reporting for Star TV News, this is Tumani Koli.
With fanfare, the Gambia has inaugurated its first conference center with international standards, a total cost of $50 million. The building was financed thanks to the Chinese corporation. Built on an area of 13 hectares with 14,000 meters per square of enclosed space, the conference center can accommodate 1,000 people and has all the required amenities. The architectural is aimed to boost Banjul's attractiveness to the sub-region and is named after the country's first president, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. Jacqueline Coley reports.
After 26 months of works, the Gambia launched last Saturday its first ultra-modern conference center. The brand new two-story building located in Bijula constitutes the first infrastructure delivered over half a dozen to be carried out in the context of preparation for the OIC summit. Beyond this meeting, for President Barrow, this conference center will enhance the attractiveness of Banjul in the sub-region. With a capacity of more than 1,000 people, the ultra-modern building has all the required amenities. According to the Gambian Minister of Transport, this center is one of the most modern in the sub-region. The conference center is the best of its kind to bear the name of the country's father of independence. The best tribute paid to his predecessors, underlines the Gambian leader. On behalf of the family, Nema Jawara, daughter of the first president of the Gambia, said she was grateful to the nation. The next challenge for the Gambia is to complete half a dozen other projects in the next 2 years to be able to organize the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit for the first time. Jacqueline Coley, Star TV News.
APRC is a party for dignified, honest, God-fearing, development-oriented, peace-loving and people who love being Gambians and want to see the Gambia prosper into a great nation, says former President Yahya Jammeh as he dismissed claims that APRC is a Jola party. Memuna Ju files in this report.
During a recent phone conversation with APRC Deputy Leader Usman Rambo Jatta Friday evening, Jammeh, speaking from his exile base in Equatorial Guinea, said the former ruling party is still the majority party and does not need an alliance with anybody whose hands are not clean. In fact, we don't need an alliance with any party. We are disciplined and we cannot bring disruptive people in our midst. The exiled leader went on to say, no one can stop him from returning to the Gambia. I am coming back. Some people say that they drove me out. Apart from Allah, nobody can take me out of the Gambia. I am on leave. I will return to the Gambia whenever I want. I have been on leave. It is only the Almighty who can say that only Yahya Jammeh's dead body will come to the Gambia, he posited. Jammeh said he left the country on his own accord, following an agreement he reached with the ECOWAS, the African Union, the European Union and the Gambia government. The APRC is planning a public demonstration to call on the government and these organizations to adhere to their commitment to ensure Jammeh could return to the Gambia. According to the terms of the January 2017 agreement, Jammeh could return to the Gambia at a time of his choosing. He admonished, with regard to your planned protest march, to ask the government, the AU, ECOWAS and the UN to respect the agreement they had with me. I am calling on you to protest in peace. Do not destroy any property. Protest in peace. The agreement must be implemented. Let me also warn those who may want to infiltrate you to cause problems. If you are a troublemaker, do not join us. We do not need troublemakers in that protest, he said. What I told Barrow was not to compromise the peace and security of the Gambia, so I cannot turn around and say, burn this country. That is satanic. I am appealing to APRC supporters, if they hear anybody insulting Babili Mansa, Jammeh himself, just forget the person. Jammeh said despite the Gambia's obsession with the Never Again campaign, the current administration has failed to cure sick Gambians. Comparing the mortality records of his government and those of Barrow's, he said Gambians are now dying like rats. I hear stories of Never Again, but in my time, I am not saying many were not dying in the hospital. There was enough medicine. Senegalese used to come to the Gambia for treatment. Our health system was the best and the cheapest. Now even pregnant women whose husbands can afford it had to go to Senegal to have a safe delivery. People are dying. Now going to the hospitals apart from the Banjul hospital is a death sentence, he alleged. He continued, it is going to end. And Gambians will forget this one day. This is just a period of Allah saying to us that when we deviate and abandon our religion, and when you have religious leaders being afraid of telling the truth, and they are brave to tell lies, this is what happens. A country of insults, human sacrifice, people dying like frogs. When I was there, even frogs were safe. I am not bragging, I am telling the truth. That was why I put lights everywhere. Frogs could cross the highway and they will not be hit. When I was there, how many times did you see a cat being killed by a vehicle? Now people are dying worse than rats. May the Almighty Allah cleanse the Gambia thoroughly. Get rid of all evil intentions. Let the Almighty Allah cleanse our hearts thoroughly so that we love each other, support each other, protect each other, and work for each other for the development of the country, for the benefit of all, Jammeh added. Jammeh also condemned tribalism and said anybody who wants to bring tribalism Jammeh also condemned tribalism and said anybody who wants to bring tribalism into APRC should be expelled. As a Muslim, I don't have a tribal issue with anybody. I have issues with bad, evil and satanic people. I cannot be tribalist because if I do, I will go against the will of Allah. Do you think I want to go to hell? I want to go to heaven, he added. Meanwhile, the Gambia government spokesperson Ibrahim Sankare has reacted to the former president's comments. In a BBC interview, Sankare said, "From what we can glean from the tape, you can see a man who is actually suffering from nostalgia. That has been a malaise that beset most exiles. For us, who have been in exile for the past years, are familiar with that situation. For us, who have been in exile for the past years, are familiar with that situation. Certainly, a man who for 22 years wielded enormous power in this country to be consigned to certain place in Equatorial Guinea, a country where none of the Gambian language is spoken. You can imagine the nightmare of that kind of consignment. So, he is really homesick, as it is very evident in the tape that he wants to come back. What is absurd though is that a man who has been exiled is actually somehow in violation of the rules of exile for a former head of states. He is inciting trouble. He is asking actually and readying his people to go onto the streets to claim for his return to the Gambia. While he is a Gambian, however, it must be noted he was no ordinary citizen because this is a guy who ruled this country for 2 decades. He consistently referenced an accord that he claimed was signed between him and some foreign governments and the Gambia government as well, while President Barrow has never signed an accord or agreement with Jammeh. Seen one or ever shown one, it appears all his hopes really are vested in this document. Imaginary as it were, as far as President Barrow is concerned, he doesn't know what document this man is talking about. However, if he insists to come to this country without permission from the Gambia government, he is doing so on his own violation, and the Gambia government cannot guarantee, as of now, President Jammeh's safety and security where he is to return forcefully, as he claims. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Maimon Najuf.
The Gambia Armed Forces decorated 18 of its senior officers at their main headquarters in Banjul on Friday, 10th January 2020. The decorated officers have underwent robust scrutiny before the promotion. Some of them are said to be degree holders from international security universities, and there are other officers who were part of this promotion, but they are currently serving in international missions. However, this promotion is in line with the country's national security reform process. Model El Baji reports.
During the ceremony, 10 lieutenants were decorated to the ranks of captain, 6 captains to the ranks of major, and 2 majors to the rank of lieutenant colonel. However, the Chief of Defense Staff, Masane and Kinte, reminded the senior officers that they will be challenged with difficulties that are synonymous with their new duties. CDS Kinte also urged them to maintain discipline and loyalty to the country.
The newly promoted officers, effective leadership at all levels of command is the duty and responsibility of the officer corps. An armed forces is as good as its officers, and it is equally as bad as its officer corps. Therefore, I need not tell you to buckle up and face the challenges associated with your new ranks. It is one thing to pass your promotion exam, but it is another thing to live up to the expectations of your responsibilities.
The Deputy Chief of Defense Staff, Yakuba Drame, expressed delight on the oaths taken by the promoted officers. He also lamented that promotion in the army is not a mere decoration, but an additional responsibilities and commitment.
During the promotion ceremony, each and every one of you took 6 oaths, reaffirming your commitment to serve your nation, to serve the institution you represent, which is the Gambia Armed Forces, with diligence, trust, allegiance to the Constitution and the country and the Commander-in-Chief, and of course, loyalty in serving this great country. You uphold the trust bestowed on you as officers, to say you will not betray the trust. In my opinion, those are very sacred oaths you've taken this morning.
The most senior among the decorated officers, Lieutenant Colonel Abdullah Mane, expressed words of wisdom to the High Command of the Gambia Armed Forces for making this decoration a successful one.
I want to remind you that to whom much is given, much is expected. Thank you, sir, for your rapt attention.
Star TV News, I am Modu Elbaji.
We'll be going for a short break and we'll be right back with the international news. Please stay tuned. Now news beyond our borders. Journalists in Sudan have denounced the seizure of 2 newspapers and 2 TV stations as a grave assault on the freedom of the press. The government says these media organizations were funded by the country's former leaders, but it has not provided any proof of this. Al Jazeera's Heba Morgan reports from Khartoum.
For nearly 5 years, Mashair Ahmed has worked as a news writer. She says it's more than a job for her. Seeing her work printed in the morning papers in Khartoum gave her a sense of accomplishment. A sense, she says, was taken away a week ago when Sudan's transitional government seized the paper she worked for.
I was working on a news piece when I heard that a decision was made to shut down some media outlets, including the one I worked for. Men in military uniform came in and said we had 30 minutes to take our personal belongings and leave. This is something we were used to under the former regime, but one of the slogans of the new government was freedom. Where is the freedom in banning us from working?
The newspaper is called Al Sudani, and it's one of 4 media outlets the government has seized. The new administration came to power in August after months of anti-government protests led to the military overthrow of President Omar al-Bashir, and after a power-sharing deal between the military and protest leaders. In late November, the government dissolved Bashir's former party and announced that it will seize all its assets and money.
We are not targeting the media outlets because of their editorial lines. The law we use to seize them is based on the law to dismantle assets of the former ruling party and return the state funds that they have used to prop them up. We've gathered information to believe that the outlets have been funded or have received funds from the former regime.
The move has been rejected by the Sudanese Journalists Union, which, along with other unions, was also ordered to disband in December. The International Federation of Journalists has condemned the move, calling it a grave assault on press freedom and the fundamental right of freedom of association. The seizure of media outlets has not only led to accusations the government is cracking down on press freedom, but has also brought in another argument. While Sudan's transitional administration says the move is part of an investigation to find sources of funds, many here, especially other journalists, are asking if the move is even legal. Some say the government should do more to prove its case before taking such actions.
The Caesar decision was based on a decree to dissolve the ruling party, but even using that to halt the work of 2 newspapers and 2 TV stations leaves room for this to be taken as a crackdown on press freedom. The body that issued the decision said that the owners of the media outlets received funds from the Sudanese government, but they didn't give any evidence.
Mashair says she was told her income won't be affected, but she wants to know why she's paying the price of a political move that has prevented her and her colleagues from doing their jobs. Heba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.
Thousands have been demonstrating in Guinea against President Alpha Conde's attempt to change the constitution to extend his time in power. They have been joined by survivors of a stadium mass killing in 2009. when security forces killed at least 156 people during an opposition rally. Those who lost loved ones say they are still waiting for justice, and that the same security forces that are cracking down now were also responsible for the 2009 brutalities. Al Jazeera's Nicholas Haig reports from the capital, Conakry.
There are moments in SARAN CISSE's life that continue to haunt her. What happened in this stadium is one of them. It was supposed to be a rally for democracy. Instead, it turned into a massacre. SARAN CISSE was with her young teenage cousin chanting for freedom when Guinea's security forces stormed the venue. Her young cousin watched as SARAN was raped by soldiers, and then he was killed. Others were hacked to death. His body was never found.
What I want to know is why. Why? Why did we have to go through this? Why did they do this to us? Why hasn't justice been served?
Questions the government are not willing to answer. This is the moment the attack took place in 2009. Security forces tortured, killed, and dumped bodies in mass graves that have yet to be unearthed. At least 156 people died in what the International Criminal Court suspects are crimes against humanity. No one has been prosecuted for the crimes. Shortly after our interview with SARAN CISSE, security forces interrupted the filming.
They demanded we erase the footage, arrested us, forcing us out of the country. Our request for an answer from the government was ignored. 10 years after the events took place, survivors still have not received justice, and many of those responsible are not only free, but still in charge of Guinea's security forces.
Human Rights Watch believes Bangura, the governor of Conakry, Chegborough, in charge of special police operations, and Jean-Claude Pivier, colonel who was up until recently in charge of the current president's security, are some of the men behind the massacre. All continue to be close allies to President Alpha Condé.
The investigation has really been delayed by, in some ways, a lack of political will. A key component of the investigation is the whereabouts of over 100 bodies, which we believe are buried in mass graves in Conakry and elsewhere.
Not only has President Alpha Condé failed to deliver justice, he's now using the same security forces involved in the massacre to quash mounting demonstrations against his attempt to extend his time in power. And so survivors are joining protesters. While there is trauma, threats, and intimidation, it seems SARAN CISSE will not be silenced. Nicholas Hawk, Al Jazeera.
4 Iraqi soldiers have been injured after rockets were fired at Balad Air Base on Sunday night. The facility, north of Baghdad, also hosts American forces. It comes amid heightened tensions between the United States and Iran, and the Iraqi parliament now wants to expel all foreign troops. But in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq, there are fears any withdrawal could lead to the resurgence of ISIS. Al Jazeera's Hoda Abdel Hamid reports from Kara Shah mountain range in northern Iraq.
These rugged and barren mountains have become a hub for ISIL sleeper cells. About 250 fighters are estimated to be hiding here, including some foreign fighters who crossed back from Syria.
They are strong. You know, after what happened in the Syria, too many foreign fighters, they came back to the Iraqi side. That's a big problem now.
We are on the mountains of Karachokh, near the town of Mahmood, once under control of ISIL, a natural protective boundary that overlooks a vast territory claimed by both Iraq and the Kurds. This is the last position of the Kurdish Peshmerga. The defense line of the Iraqi army is about 5 kilometers away from here. And in between, you have ISIL fighters hiding in caves at the bottom of this mountain. The mountain range is ideal territory for sleeper cells to lay low. Kurdish officials say the fighters have dug a network of tunnels to connect some of them and are taking advantage of a security vacuum.
ISIL as a terrorist organization is not finished, but it's changing its way of operating. It lost territory, and now it's organized in small cells on the move. In 2018, there were 456 attacks and 1,242 killed. In 2019, there were 238 attacks and 1,058 casualties. and it continues.
They happen mainly in the so-called disputed territories, a vulnerable belt along the borders of the Kurdish region. The Kurds are against the withdrawal of foreign troops. They have boycotted the non-binding vote held by Iraq's parliament.
We think this decision was one of emotion rather than logic. It was hastily taken. There are realities on the ground. There are financial and security issues that have to be taken into account. I don't think pressure from certain political parties in Iraq or the killing of Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis were a strong enough reason for the vote to take place.
Joint operations are key to prevent ISIL from regrouping. Here, one carried out in the Hamreen Mountains near Kirkuk, days before the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Forces under his command have also played a key role in the fight against ISIL. Since Soleimani's death, the fight against ISIL continues, but at a slower pace. Kurds and those living in places like Karachokh and Mahmoud fear that ISIL could take advantage to strengthen its foothold on the area once again. Huda Abdelhamid, Al Jazeera in northern Iraq.
Niger's government says almost 90 soldiers have been killed after attackers stormed a base near the border with Mali. It has also declared 3 days of mourning from Monday for the attack in the western town of Chinagodra, the deadliest against Nigerian forces in years. West Africa's Sahel has a number of armed groups in the region who have staged several deadly attacks in recent months. Al Jazeera's Ahmed Idris reports from the capital, Niamey.
Now, there's been a surge in violence across West Africa's Sahel region. The number of people killed in attacks in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger jumped from 770 in 2016 to more than 4,000 last year. It's largely because of a combination of attacks by armed groups and intercommunal violence. Remote areas where the state's presence is weak are especially vulnerable. The humanitarian cost is also growing. The UN estimates 500,000 people have been displaced, a tenfold increase in 3 years. Let's speak to our regional correspondent, Ahmed Idris, who's in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Ahmed, the death toll from this latest attack jumping significantly. What more are you learning about the circumstances of the attack itself?
Well, basically, like you said, these are areas that are less protected. If you look at the countries of the Sahel, they are vast and largely unmanned. Are the countries able to police their borders? The answer is no. Do they? Simply because they don't have the manpower and resources to do that. So these groups, these fighter groups, actually are getting bolder. And with the conflict in Libya and other parts of North Africa and West Africa, these groups are having a field day, especially targeting military convoys, military installations in that region. So the attack in Chinagodara was actually carried out, according to some sources, by rebels or other fighters who came in from Mali, just like the incident in December 2019 when we saw 71 Niger soldiers killed in that attack. Now, the government is talking about killing 63 fighters in the attack on the military base, but a lot of people believe that these attacks will continue simply because the governments in the region do not have the manpower and resources to deal with these fighters who seem to be trained and well coordinated and also have connections with foreign hardline groups like Al-Qaeda, like ISIL, like groups like Boko Haram. And if you look at the dynamics of the region as well, it's not only the countries of Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, and the rest that have these problems. Come to the other side of the conflict. In Nigeria, what you have is Boko Haram growing bolder by the day, attacking military formations, setting up roadblocks on major highways in Nigeria, abducting people, especially security forces and their families. So a lot of people think that before this situation gets any better, it will probably get worse.
So, yeah, indeed. And the leaders of the region, the Sahel in particular, have called for international support. There is already a foreign presence there. The French troops are on the ground, as well as a regional African force. These leaders are meeting the French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday in a few days. What can we expect from that?
Well, basically, France will probably promise more aid, but it wants to define the boundaries, what kind of help it can give these countries and how far it can go. Already, France has more than 4,500 troops in the region, in the Sahel in particular, and people in the region are actually wondering, why are these attacks continuing? For example, in Mali, there are more than 15,000 international forces in that country, and we continue to see violence, not only in Mali, but spilling from Mali into neighboring countries. Burkina Faso, Niger, all these countries are not safe, yet we have thousands and thousands of international troops in the region, and people in the region don't find it amusing at all. A lot of people are angry, calling for withdrawal of these forces unless they are willing to take action to stop these fighters. Many people, I spoke to one person in particular in Bamako when Al Jazeera was there just a few weeks ago, and he said, look, if the international community wants this madness, as he said, as he called it, to end, it will probably end in 1 or 2 weeks, simply because there are enough resources on the part of international forces, United Nations. If they want to end this, they can support the regional armies to deal with the problem. However, a lot of people are not happy that with the presence of many international troops on their soil, this conflict continue to claim lives and displace thousands of people.
Thank you, Ahmed, for that. Ahmed Idris live for us in Abuja, Nigeria.
Before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. Newly elected president of Guinea-Bissau, Umaru Sissoco Embalo, arrives in the Gambia. Thousands of protesters chant 5 years as they petition Gambian leader to stay in office. APRC denies part in Sunday's pro-government protest. The Gambia inaugurated Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara Conference Center. APRC is not a Jola party, says former Gambian leader Yaya Jammeh. That's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you.